Hobby Quick Hits. Delivering that breaking hobby news directly to your earlobes. You want to know those hot drops from the card shop? We've got you covered. With your host, John Newman.
Hi folks, welcome to episode 234 of Hobby Quick Hits as we approach the National here. I hope to see many of you at the National. If you see me, come shake a hand, say hello. Love to meet as many of you as I can, right? Like our flagship show, right? Sports Card Nation. Our tagline is "The hobby is the people." So it's not just words to me; it's my mantra. So with that being said, this episode is titled "Hobby Money," and I just wanted to do an episode kind of where we talk about some of the things I've observed especially over the last few years, about what I've seen in the hobby and financial stuff. And whether you have to see whether you agree with me. Am I right? Am I wrong? I always appreciate that feedback. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. Not going to be long. It's Hobby Quick Hit, so we're going to kind of tackle it and be done with it, at least at this time. But so thanks everybody out there. Hope to see some of you very soon. Let's start the show.
Okay, now a quick word from our great sponsor, followed by the new product release schedule. Then we'll go around the Hobbyverse to tell you all the latest hobby happenings and news. Then we'll tackle today's topic of discussion.
Hi, this is Pat Hughes, Cubs announcer, coming to you from the Sports Card Shop in beautiful New Buffalo, Michigan. The Gocher family has built an incredible place here for collectors to buy, sell, and trade cards and memorabilia. Be sure to stop by and let them show you around. TheSportsCardShop.com, connecting sports, athletes, the hobby, and collectors around the world.
Hi. This is Alan Pinkett, and I'm here to tell you the Gocher family has done it again. They've just opened up the Sport Card Shop in downtown Valparaiso, Indiana, and it is awesome. If you're a collector, you need to check this place out. Tell them Alan sent you and get a free gift on your first visit.
All right, let's go over the product release schedule. That's for the next 2 weeks. Starting with July 29th, we have 2026 Panini Contenders PFL, 2026 Topps Tribute Baseball, 2026 Upper Deck Artifacts Golf, 25/26 Upper Deck Fleer Ultra PWHL, 25/26 Upper Deck Ice Hockey. Going to the 30th, we have 2025-26 Topps UEFA Club Competitions Inception Soccer. Not as easy to say as you think. Going to end of the month, July 31st, 25-26 Panini Prism Basketball, 26 Pro Set Metal Football Hobby and Jumbos, Pokemon Mega Evolution Pitch Black Build and Battle Decks, and 2025 Topps Resurgence Football Blasters, Delights, Hobbies, and Megas. Let's go to August. August 5th, we have the 2026 Topps Chrome Baseball, the Megas. Also Topps Chrome Update Series Basketball, Blasters, Delight, Jumbo, Hobby, Megas. The 7th, we have 2026 Leaf Seasons in the Sun Baseball. Also August 7th, we have 2026 Onyx Track and Field Trading Cards, 25/26 Panini Revolution K Soccer, 2026 Wild Card Splat Summer Splash Baseball, Pokemon First Partner Illustration Collection Series 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Legendary Arc V-Deck. Also on August 7th, Upper Deck Platinum DC trading cards. And that's your rundown for the next 2 weeks. As I always say, happy ripping. Choose your weapon, happy ripping. All right.
And now, our feature presentation.
Okay, so again, like I said in the intro, I'm just going to share some of the observations that I've noticed, in the hobby, whether it be in person, online, as a show dealer, as a show customer, as a content creator, the whole ball of wax, just things I've observed and sort of, I don't want to say put the puzzle together, but sort of, connecting the dots, if you will. One of the negative things I've noticed, and maybe it's not as new as I'm trying to make it out to be, but I think we're starting to see sort of, and I don't like it. I'm not, excited about it. It's not something I like to see, but I think we've seen like a caste system sort of develop, right? Where we have the higher end of the hobby, which is the smallest percentage, truth be told, sort of look down at anyone that's not in that space, rather than look at it as we're all under the same umbrella, we're all under the same fraternity. Sure, one person might have more discretionary income than another, right? But instead of like supporting each other's hobby, it's sort of become sort of a flex fest, especially on that higher end, and a look down fest when someone that's not in that upper space, posts something or does something in the hobby. We've seen sort of a divide, and even though that top space or that top cast level is smaller, it still exists, that rift. And it's disappointing because I try to, whether someone, regardless of what level of collecting you're at, right? I view everyone as we're all in this fraternity together. We may go to different colleges, but our fraternity is the same. But I unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people view it the same way. It's become sort of a competition to be better than somebody rather than to just enjoy cards in your own way and support other people who enjoy cards in their own way. I think it's become a flex fest. I think that's even happened on the content creation side. So that's one thing I've noticed. And again, maybe it's not new, but it seems to have really gotten worse. Maybe that's the way to phrase it. Investing over collecting. I got in, again, sound like a broken record here, but I got in the hobby as a 7-year-old kid in 1979, and I just wanted to get as many cards as I could get. I didn't care about the values or what they're worth. I put rubber bands around them, true confessions. And for me, it was about the love and passion of, at the time, baseball cards. And, as obviously I get older, that really hasn't changed. Now, obviously I do content creation. I did my first show at 15. So I don't want to, I'm not trying to be hypocritical with the financial aspect, but it wasn't the driving force then for me. And even today, even though I'm a show dealer and sell online, it's still not the driving force today. It's, if the financial aspect went away, I'd still be collecting cards. I'd still be doing content creation. But I think for some, it's just about, it is just about the dollar signs and money. There's no attachment to cards. There's no nostalgia for certain people. There's no story that, hey, my mom or dad or my grandpa or my cousin or my buddy got me in the hobby. It's just strictly, I'm going to buy this for $100 and sell it for $300. And that's the only attachment. And I remember at last year's National going downstairs in Rosemont at the Donald Stevens Convention Center. And there was, all the tables and trade nights and just walking around. I'm not a trade night guy per se, but I was walking around kind of taking in the moments and just hearing some people. And it was a lot of younger people, but I even heard, I don't want to like just make it out to be a younger collector or younger hobbyist deal. I heard some older folks too. The cards were just vessels to financial, right? I heard people say things like, yeah, I got this an hour ago. I can let it go for this. Or if you wanted to, I'll take these two if you wanted to take this. They were just strictly monetary items. There was no PC or, and that sort of thing. And again, to each their own. But I think we've really lost a high percentage of people who, I don't want to say a high percentage, but we've lost a little bit of that nostalgia and why that we're in the hobby, if you will. And, it's sort of disappointing, but again, it doesn't, and that, and let me say this too as well, right? Whether you like that or you don't care, or you do care, right? At the end of the day, you control what you want to collect, how you want to collect. And that's the beauty of collecting is you're your own CEO, right? To whatever direction you want to go. And those folks really shouldn't affect you other than maybe having an opinion on it. Let's talk about the breaking aspect. We're going to do an episode on breakers coming up, I believe it. I don't know if it'll be the next one, but it'll be very soon. But we've seen, breaking, which I've always said has, at the time saved the wax industry, right? We went from a time where products were collecting dust sometimes on shelves, certain products, and now everything sells out. You could make a product that sells, cornhole players on it. Someone's going to buy it. Someone's going to buy into a break. There's nothing that doesn't sell. And, I think, I think certain breakers, like any part of the hobby, right, do it the right way, price it the right way, and then others are just see dollar signs, and it's just about maximizing ROI, not about building community, and that sort of thing. And I think it's sort of fed into that flipper mentality. I'm going to buy into this break at hopefully a low price, hit something big, and in turn just sell the card. It's like day trading. And again, not for me. But it's definitely a huge part of the hobby and a huge part of the money, and it's a huge part of why Fanatics / Tops and other manufacturers are doing so well. It's the breaking part of the industry. And so for those breakers that are doing it the right way, kudos to you. For the greedy, unmoral or immoral, if you will, that's on you, and it's too bad, I guess I'll say. Let's talk about price manipulation. This is something, there's two sides to the argument. People say it doesn't happen, and other people say it's happening. I'm it's happening part of the camp. I think we're seeing people band together, if you will, or work together to try to set pricing, obviously at a higher price to maximize their earnings, whether that's through shill bidding, whether that's on bidding on a card, even with no intention to buy it, just so it looks like it's sold for a price level. I firmly believe that is going on. And I think a lot of people who follow the hobby pretty closely, I think the high percentage of those people will tell you it 100% is going on. It's hard to, how do you stop it? I think it just comes to people saying, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to participate. But, you got to have everyone doing that, and that's never probably going to happen. So I don't think it ever goes away. I think you just have to know, if you're in the market to buy a card, I think you just have to have a budget. And if it works out, where you can acquire a card you're looking for, great. But if it doesn't, don't overpay for it, and just be wary that some of these techniques and practices are going on to raise the prices of certain cards, maybe even certain players, right? So you got to just be aware about it, be smart, hopefully not participate in that. I've done a show bidding episodes. I don't want to rehash that, but I've been asked to like bid on somebody's card to drive the price up, and I just won't do it. And I'm sure they weren't happy with my answer, but I'm just not going to. Just not going to do that. I'm not going, I feel it's a problem. I'm not going to contribute to something that I feel is a problem. Another thing I get from people who correspond with the show, whether that's via text or PM or DM or email, is, someone saying, man, my son or daughter's like priced out of the hobby. This stuff is just so expensive. They want to participate in the hobby, but it's just stuff so expensive. It's becoming very difficult. And my answer, to those correspondence is like, I know it is tough. I get it. But there are ways to, for a son or daughter or anybody, I don't want to make it up just to be a kid's thing, but anybody can be priced out of the hobby, including adults. So how do you combat that, right? Well, there's still ways to enjoy the hobby, right? If you're going to a show, go to those dollar boxes, those bargain boxes. You'd be amazed what you find in those. I do them at my own table, and I've had cards, that were turned out to come out to be $40, $50 cards. Someone will actually find them in my dollar box. And in some cases, they're like, can you still sell this? Like, this card's like worth a lot more. I'm like, hey, good for you for finding it. Yeah. You reaped you did the work, you get it for $1. So go through those bargain boxes and you'd be surprised what you can find. Trade, right? If the whole hobby's not just cash money, right? Make some trades with people. So maybe you can't afford a card cash wise, but you have some existing inventory that someone who has the card you're trying to get would rather have, and both sides can be happy with a potential trade, right? So it doesn't always have to be transactional with currency, right? It can be transactional with cards for cards. So trading, hitting the bargain bins, maybe going to some lesser known auction houses and maybe picking up some deals potentially that way. There are ways, if you want to put in a little work, there are ways to still enjoy the hobby and be, financially and fiscally responsible and save some money. Another thing we've seen more so, maybe COVID has something to do with this, but I don't think it's just since COVID. I just think it's gotten worse since the COVID crescendo, right? Is that flipper mentality. Again, going back to the non-attachment to any cards. The cards just represent dollar signs. Like, what this card is $50, this card's $1,000. Not this player means a lot to me, or hey, did you see what this guy did this week in the league, and that sort of thing. So there's and again, that's not relegated to just the card hobby. That could be real estate, right? We see shows where people buy beat up houses, demo them, and then rebuild them, and then just to make a profit. It's a business, a legitimate business. So it is legitimate. It's not like anything illegal. It's just not the way I hobby. And again, to each their own. I'm just saying, it's to me, it's escalated. And someone asked me a question. You think there's more flippers than collectors? I'd still say there's more collectors than flippers. But I will say this: the flipping population is growing, but so's the collector. Hopefully, so's the collector population as well. I'm going to kind of close on one more topic, right? Credit cards and the hobby. And you might be hearing that right now, scratching your head like credit cards and the hobby. You know, credit cards are a great tool. I have them, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I have multiple, right? I have joint ones with my wife. I have some that are my own, and my own for my business side of the hobby. And it's an easy pratfall to go down to, credit card's easy. You just put it in the machine or tap to pay and you get an item and it's yours. And you don't feel like you bought it because no money, you didn't pull money out of your wallet or money out of your account. And now you're taking an item with you. And then that bill comes, right? It's an easy pratfall to fall into. And I've already told this story, but for those that don't know, during my heyday in probably the 2000s, early 2000s, I was opening, a lot of wax and running up, putting it. Sometimes I would pay cash or pay it in full, and other times I just charge it and say, well, I'll just pay off my credit card whenever. And one day I opened the mail and that credit card bill was $10K. And I kid you not, one credit card, which is what I use. I didn't have a bunch of them where I had big bills, but I maxed out that card, I think at the time at like $10,000. And I'm like, holy smokes. I didn't even realize it. It kind of just happened and snuck up on me. And that's a really bad feeling. It's kind of scary. And I was also early in my marriage, and I'm like, I gotta put a stop to this. And so I did eventually pay that credit card off. I stopped adding to it, and it took a few years to pay off that credit card bill and get back to baseline and zero. And it taught me a very expensive lesson, right? To be more wary of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And it hasn't happened again, and it will not happen again. Matter of fact, at the time of this recording, I have a zero balance on my credit cards. And I'll even go outside of having say I have a very close to zero balance even on my joint cards with my wife. We went to dinner the other night and we were talking about finances, and my wife does, to her credit, does a lot of the household finances and bills and that sort of thing. And she pointed out, hey, we're very close to having our credit cards be at zero, which is a really great feeling. And even with my personal credit cards, they are at zero. So that's a good place to be. It allows you a little more discretionary income to take vacations with my family, do card stuff solo, and that's where I'm at. And I will say this, and you're seeing a lot. Like I talked about, we let off sort of with the flexing with some of that higher echelon, if you will, the 2%ers that are, the high rollers of the hobby. And you'd be surprised, and I know this factually, that a good percentage of those folks are paying for some of these big transactions with credit cards. And I'm not even talking just one, but multiple. I know some folks are taking out financial loans against their credit card with the purpose, like, I'll pay it back. And then we forget about the interest payments, right? That's how the credit cards companies make money, right? They don't make money if you just pay off your balance in full right away. They make money on the interest payments. They don't really want you necessarily to pay off those cards. And where I know there's certain folks that are buying these big time cards on credit. And again, that's their business. I'm not trying to, but as someone who I just told you ran up to 10,000, and I'll tell you, some of these other folks, it's more than the 10,000. It's multiple cards at 10,000 or even more. To acquire something, to post and kind of flex it. and they don't realize that rabbit hole they might be going down that could lead to some financial trouble. I don't want to say ruin, but potentially that's always a risk, right? I've heard people have to claim bankruptcy. When you claim bankruptcy, right, you don't get to keep your stuff. You have to generally sell it to try to recoup as many of the funds that you owe when you claim bankruptcy. So I'm not saying that's going to happen in every situation, but I think you're going to start to hear more about people getting into, financial troubles, if they admit it, if they make it public, which, I don't know if who will or how many people will be honest about that, at least outwardly, maybe internally or with family or a spouse. But I think there's going to be, and I think some people are already ready there, right, where they're getting those bills in the mail and getting that sticker shock, like, oh my God, now I got to start paying these back. And when you have multiple of them, there's a minimum balance due, and I've heard of situations where people can't even make, when you add them all up, they can't even make the minimum balances on multiple cards. So I guess when it comes to money in the hobby, just be fiscally responsible, know what could potentially happen, and obviously you want to avoid that for yourself. And if you have a family and married, that will be a hard one to explain to a spouse if you secretly ran up a six-figure multiple credit card line. That could be that could lead to more problems than just financial. That can lead to, some problems on the home front. So just wanted to share some observations, if you will, things I've noticed, things I know to be occurring, and just shed some light on it. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up this episode of Hobby Quick Hits. I appreciate all of you. Hope to see some of you here at the National this week. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.